Hi, you're watching.
This story follows a man who gets transported into a game he was playing, and reincarnated into a god named Nebula. However, he's not alone in this divine realm, as there were 27 other gods, and they have to fight to become the sole ruler of the planet and reshape it according to their vision. Part of their challenge is to find and influence a suitable tribe, and luckily for Nebula, a lizardman named Rakrak was insightful enough to realize what his intentions were, and so, after preparing what they necessarily needed, they followed their god's will and leave the sanctuary. However, their path was filled with dangers, as they encounter another tribe totally different from them. They are the Frogmen. They even have advanced weapon that the lizard tribe doesn't have. But what's more surprising is that they also had a lizardman with them who they treat as an equal. But with the insightful eyes of Rakrak and his wife, they saw through their lies. With this, the Frogmen had failed to entice the lizardmen to live together with them, and therefore they just leave and just plan to meet again. Now on to the next part. A few hours later, along the lake where Oloy's frogmen settled down and made home, Owen, the lizard man, collapsed on a small sandy beach, as he was slapped hard by Shunin, accusing Owen of revealing confidential information to the lizardmen's tribe leader because of how wary they were. And knowing that saying the truth wouldn't do him good, Owen bowed his head and clarified to them that the tribe leader of the lizardmen only asked him how to be a good archer, and he only answered that question. But the warrior Oboy found it ridiculous, as Owen couldn't even shoot an arrow properly. So he then kicked Owen on the side while Shunin just watched. Then Owen tumbled on the ground with a grunt. But even with this, Owen still explained to them that he only told him that he could use a bow so that it wouldn't make the lizardmen's tribe leader less suspicious of them, which was a sound reasoning for Shunin. And seeing their demeanor change, Owen explained further that the lizardmen's tribe leader then kept asking how a bow is made, as he didn't think the frogmen would tell him. But he said that he couldn't tell him because he was in great debt to the frogmen, and if he really wanted to learn archery, he told him that he should pay a fee first. But he said regretfully that he couldn't give him anything right away and gave up asking. With this, Shunin was impressed of how shrewd Owen is, and so Shunin looked at Oboy, signaling that he thinks that would be enough, which Oboy also thinks as well. And as if nothing happened, Shunin praised Owen, as expected from the sharp trickster they knew of, and as Owen felt relieved that the interrogation was done, Shunin reminded Owen that his role in this was big, which he understood quite well. And seeing Shunin was talking with his head turned towards the lake, Owen followed his gaze. There was a small island in the middle of the lake, on which were a few huts obscured by bushes. The frogmen warriors took turns surveilling the area closely. Young lizardmen were trapped inside of the huts, and among them was Owen's child. And as Owen was thinking of this, Shunin smirked wide and clear and told Owen how lucky he really was. He was about to offer those children as sacrifice. But the new sacrifices have found their way here instead, so he is very lucky indeed. To which Owen just looked down and nodded. And knowing that this was an open threat, Owen showed to them how eager he was, and promised to them that he will definitely deceive the other lizards in any way possible. And Owen clenched his teeth while saying so. If he had known, he wouldn't have worked so hard to come all the way here. Truth be told, they hadn't started out here. They hadn't come from the wilderness either, but they had been looking for a home as they had been attacked by several forces in the south. It was then Oloy's frogmen took the exhausted lizardmen in and warmly welcomed them. Outside of their different skin color, they welcomed them even though they were of another species. But of course it was all trickery. The frogmen invested time to grant them favors and kindly accepted the grayish-brown lizardmen into their tribe. The lizardmen began to live a somewhat pleasant life alongside and under the influence of the frogmen. Then came the day the two tribes decided to hold a brotherly ritual, and everything changed. The grayish-brown lizardmen went kayaking with the frogmen warriors to enjoy a banquet held in the middle of the island. The lizardmen suspected nothing and had gotten completely drunk on the alcohol Oloy gave them. But the moment they passed out, they were all captured by the frogmen warriors. And the frogmen tribe currently had 1,500 frogmen, and 200 grayish-brown lizardmen were enslaved by them. Aside from the difference in numbers, the lizardmen children and their caregivers were all held hostage on the island, so the other lizardmen never tried to make a stand against the frogmen. And the most problematic thing was that the frogmen had a god, and that god demanded living sacrifices. The god didn't want the sacrifice to be animals, but instead wanted people, more specifically, beings that had a conscience and walked on two legs. And so, the tribal chief and warriors of the lizardmen were offered. The other grayish-brown lizardmen could clearly see what was happening on the island from across the lake. The monster chewed on and ate the tribal chief and warriors, one by one, spitting out parts that tasted bad. Even as the lizardmen bore witness to the horrifying sight of their fellow men getting eaten alive, they couldn't do anything out of fear. Owen had also been among the lizardmen watching, And Owen was shrewd, just like Shunin had said. He knew what kind of attitude he had to have in order to survive and protect his family. Owen knew that it would be more advantageous to approach the son Shunin instead of the old and large Oloi. Owen wasn't a warrior, but he would have been regarded as the wise one among his tribe, and he learned to be obedient at the present time. But still, reality hadn't changed. The two-headed fiend liked soft flesh. If old lizard men were sacrificed, it would only kill them, and then it would demand the next sacrifice to be offered right away. Sometimes it would even secretly go after and swallow frogmen, saying that the lizardmen's flesh was too thick. And on those days, the frogmen would hit the lizardmen and hurriedly sacrifice the children. So the reality is, the two-headed fiend rules over the frogmen, and the frogmen rule over them. This won't change. And in Owen's opinion, things couldn't be changed if they weren't meant to be changed. The number of grayish-brown lizardmen had been rapidly decreasing ever since they were subjugated by the frogmen. They were either sacrificed or beaten to death, and if some managed to run away, the same number of lizardmen would then be sacrificed. It was inevitable that Owen's child would be claimed someday. But the opportunity has come. It was worth enduring everything until now. Even though the size of the new lizardman tribe was still unknown, their population didn't seem small, though he doesn't think they have enough to fight against the frogmen. According to the frogmen warriors, there were about 600 lizardmen. Owen had considered inciting a fight between the frogmen and the lizardmen, but he thought the 600 lizardmen would just be outnumbered, and it would be impossible for them to defeat the two-headed fiend. The black-scaled lizardmen wouldn't stand a chance should a battle break out. They were a barbaric tribe from a distant land and didn't even know what a bow and arrow was. In addition to that, the frogmen had a secret weapon. Even if their grayish-brown scaled lizardman tribal chief and warriors had fought the frogmen, they wouldn't have stood a chance. Everything is already set in stone. So the only possibility that Owen could really hold on to was to let the black-scaled lizard to be sacrificed first, as they can live a lot longer time if that happens. He doesn't care about others, or even his own survivability. All he wanted was that his son lives a little longer. And a few days had passed on the side of Rakrak's tribe. It had been several days since their first encounter with the frogmen. Since then, Rakrak's clan and the frogmen had met 3 more times, and Rakrak's clan was able to exchange quite a few items that they liked. And when the 4th meeting arrived, Rakrak's clan had offered the frogmen a buffalo, which made Shunin happy to see a magnificent beast. And it's alive at that. And seeing Shunin's reaction, Rakrak again stated to him that this should be enough for the bow. But Shunin was hesitant about this. He knew they couldn't afford to give their weapons to the other tribe with just a few buffalo. But even before Shunin could respond, just like what Shunin had done, Owen stepped up to break the tension off and suggested that before they could trade weapons, why don't they first get to know each other first? Plus, they do not know anything about the black-scaled tribe yet, so they would like to visit their village. Then they might be able to gift them a bow. And the bow was in fact a secondary issue to Rakrak. While it would definitely become a useful tool if they learned how to use it, the large frogman tribe was the main problem. Even though the 2 tribes had gotten quite close, the frogmen had never shown them their village. Their reason was that Rakrak's clan hadn't welcomed the frogmen into their village either. However, in Rakrak's opinion, he thought that because the frogmen tribe was larger, they should be the ones to show their village first. With this in mind, he refused the offer that Shunin had gave. But the trade today wasn't for nothing, because as they were exchanging items, the lizardmen that were smart and had good vision would sneak a look at the bows and pretend to borrow and use it to take a closer look. But this approach had its limits. And so even with this, the arrow that they shot with their replica of a bow just flies about half as far as they shoot. It was not even close. This was the limit for imitated objects. Even though they tried to imitate it perfectly, they can't seem to figure out what exact material was used to make the bowstring. It seemed like the tendons of a creature were torn and weaved back together when they saw it last time. And they only used 1 buffalo for practice. It'll be better if they kill and use a few more buffaloes. But the problem was that they can't. They used too many for the exchanges. So it seemed like there's nothing more they can do. This is the limit for now. And if they happen to use the tendons of a cockatrice, it would be too difficult for them to also get a hold of some. And the 5th meeting was underway. But they weren't thinking of bringing with them any buffaloes this time, but a piece of the large monster's shell. They realized that this piece of shell could only be damaged by Rakrak when God assumed control over his body. Not even iron or other tools could leave a single scratch. This mysterious shell was valuable on its own. But apart from that, it could be used to boast that they had killed such a monster. They might not believe it, but they'll likely become cautious at the least. And this was necessary since all of those frogmen acted the same as Owen. So there's no mistake that they're trying to play a dirty trick. The problem is they don't know how they're going to play it. But even though exchanges with the frogmen were underway, Rakrak always made sure to stay alert. It wasn't easy for the frogman to scout around Rakrak's clan, and he knows too well that they must make some progress today. So he asked Jael if she checked if their people have collected a lot of the medicine that apparently treats itchiness well, to which she confirmed. And it was apparently easy, as the herbalist knew of a place where the medicinal herb abundantly grew. This was such a good news for Rakrak, as he heard. The frogman tribe was currently suffering from an itching illness, but fortunately, no one in Rakrak's clan had contracted it. This might also be by the grace of the nameless beetle god. But even with this, Rakrak was wishing that guy named Owen to be their key, which Jael overheard, so she suggested to give that Owen guy a chance. This made Rakrak think for a while, but a suggestion coming from his wife was a big deal, so he considered it. Meanwhile, back on the frogman's village, Owen was being choked by Oboy as his plans didn't work out this time either. But seeing that Owen's face is already turning blue, Shunan told to stop, otherwise he might actually die. But Oboy just continued as he was still dissatisfied with Owen, and seeing that he won't stop anytime soon, Owen gathered every oxygen that he could get to clarify things to them. He didn't mean to fail again, but these lizard men with black scales and water buffalo skulls on their heads seem especially vigilant. In response, Oboy insultingly asks Owen if he is saying these new lizards are different from they were, who were completely ignorant and just accepted everything, which Owen tried his best to reply with a smile, and just agreed with him. But with the cowardly attitude that Owen displayed, Oboy felt disgusted with him. He didn't even want Owen to be at close proximity with him any longer, and so he throw Owen to the ground and just leave Owen to Shunan. After Oboy was nowhere to be seen, Shunan told Owen that it would be better for him to hurry, obtain as much information from them as he can, and if possible, he must try his best to invite him and his warriors to their village without raising any suspicions. This was a surprise to Owen, and the way Shunan had said it seemed to imply that something was wrong going on behind the scene, so he immediately asks Shunan what it was. But it seems that Shunan was hesitating whether to tell Owen or not. Still, Owen could only wait for Shunan's reply in the most subservient manner. Luckily, Oboy wasn't here to stop Shunan from telling him, and Shunan decided that it would be okay for him to know. With this, Shunan revealed that his father, the tribal chief, wishes to hurry and carry out the living sacrifice. This was indeed a shocking news to Owen, since there was still quite some time until the sacrifice should be held. This was because they had hurriedly done so not long ago, and the ritual was held to get revelations from the two-headed fiend about Rakrak's clan. But nothing much came out of it compared to the value of the sacrifices, so he can't understand why they want to hold another ritual. So Owen just patiently waited for Shunan to reveal more, and probably this information only shared among frogmen, so he must listen carefully. And just as he wanted, Shunan revealed to him that the disease is getting worse for the elders, his father included. This only confused Owen, as the only disease think of was the itching illness, which he believes it wasn't particularly life-threatening. But to his surprise, Shunan revealed to him that it was indeed a much dangerous disease. A priest died of this itching illness yesterday. They didn't tell them lizard men, but once they get the itching illness, a sticky white layer of mucus begins to cover their skin, and that area becomes itchy. No matter how hard one tries to wipe it away, the mucus doesn't disappear, but continuously expands. It becomes hard to breathe once an infected was covered with the mucus for a certain period of time, and eventually, they die. Owen listened with no facial expressions, and because of how smart he was, he knew that Shunan is testing him. This is the first time he is hearing that this itching illness is a deadly disease. But this also explains why some of the frogmen haven't been showing themselves lately. Everything makes sense now. Some of them are probably already dead, and he knows all too well that he couldn't appear glad or surprised. And therefore, Owen put on a sad expression, and stated that he should also be careful so word of this doesn't spread, because some healthy and energetic lizard men may make fun of the frogmen. To which Shunan just casually responded, "That's obvious." But he admitted that they won't be able to hide the fact forever. And seeing that this was Shunan's main concern, Owen quickly thought of something, and so he stated that even if word spreads, there is a way to keep the lizard men in check. They can tell them that it could also spread to lizard men, which Shunan thought was a good idea, but the problem was it wouldn't really spread to them. To his surprise, Owen already has a solution for that. He revealed that there are grasses that create white foam if one mash them, and also grasses that make one itch, and he is the one making the most contact with the frogmen. So all he has to do is pretend that he got it from them. This was such a sound plan. Even Shunan couldn't help himself but get excited, and as Shunan was about to compliment Owen, he somehow couldn't think of an appropriate word to use and ended up mumbling. Then he thought of a good word to refer to Owen as a charlatan, which wasn't even a great compliment to say the least. But what could he do? And so he just laughs it off. But as Owen thought he had overcome a hurdle, Shunan went closer to him and whispered that his father's itching illness is becoming worse. He is a strong man, so he is holding against the disease longer than anyone else, but he is slowly losing energy. He wishes to be treated by offering a sacrifice to the two-headed fiend, different from last time. They need a large-scale living sacrifice. They will need quite a lot this time. He is not quite sure how much, but they might sacrifice as much as possible until it works. And his father was a bit sad that there were quite a bit of children in the huts in the middle of the island, and that they weren't being used as sacrifices. And it seemed that Shunin didn't think too much about the lives of the lizard men that were going to be abandoned anyway. However, Owen got shivers down his spine. He can't get the fact that these frogmen was planning to sacrifice them until it works. So he cursed at that damn two-headed fiend, as it was incompetent at doing anything. It's just a giant man-eating, commotion-making and threatening monster, just like how they are slaves to this freaking frogs. They are slaves to that monster. If it could cure the disease, it wouldn't have let them get it in the first place. However, Owen did not express these thoughts, and just stayed silent. But surprisingly, as his blood boils inside, Shunin promised that if he just lured out the black-scale lizardmen, he will unconditionally exclude his children from being sacrificed. And just with these few words, Owen's rage instantly dissipate. He even thanked Shunin for this, and promised that he will do his best. However, before Shunin could leave, Owen requested to at least reconsider trading a few bows for the negotiations. This irritated Shunin, but before he could respond, Owen explained that he saw the lizardmen's tribe leader get anxious like a child every time they showed him the bows, so he think it is the right time for them to give them what they want in order to get what they need. With this, Shunin was convinced, and now he believed that one bow isn't too great of a sacrifice if that means they can enslave them all, and the bow would eventually return to their possession anyway. And Owen thought he had put a lot of work into the last 4 meetings. There was no mistake that the young lizardman called Reincarnated was a pretty strong warrior. However, he is not sure if he is a wise tribal chief. Just because one is a good fighter doesn't mean one would be a good chief. And he knows this because he experienced it himself. Being obsessed over a good and new weapon was a virtue for a warrior, but not for a chief. And Reincarnated won't be able to handle the frogmen, let alone the two-headed fiend. And just like what Shunin just said, it wouldn't matter that they gave them a few more bows, because if they succeed in enticing him, the weapons they have would return safely to them. With this, they were confident that the next meeting would be the last. The next day, the 5th meeting had started, and the lizardmen warriors and frogmen warriors were getting familiar with each other's faces. So the 5th meeting wasn't going too bad. Those who brought new goods to barter began to talk to each other and bargain. However, Owen the trickster knew there was not much information to get out of those lizardmen. He doesn't know how Reincarnated the chief is keeping them quiet, but they don't say anything other than talking about trading goods. This guy named Reincarnated is totally different. Even the exchange with Reincarnated was much better than Owen had expected, so Owen wondered how Reincarnated had been holding it in until now. But the tribal chief now pleaded for at least 1 bow in exchange for the abundant medicinal herbs they had collected. But Shunin didn't approve of it so easily. Even if he had approved to trade some bows yesterday, he was trying to get more out of Reincarnated, and so he explained that he couldn't do just that for the time being, as they need a certain level of faith before trading weapons. But Reincarnated already anticipated this, and so instead of just letting these frogmen walk all over them, he used this opportunity to get what he wanted. Basically, Reincarnated suggested for the sake of the faith of both tribes, he has a request to make, and that is he would like a separate conversation with Owen, which Shunin approved while Oboy opposed the suggestion, but Oboy eventually caved given the attitude Reincarnated had displayed. And just as Reincarnated and Owen finally got to be alone, Reincarnated asks Owen what he wanted, but Owen didn't recognize the change in Reincarnated's attitude right away. All Owen thought was that the time had come to say what he had prepared, so he stated that he wanted trust. And just as Reincarnated began to wonder what he meant, Owen began to lie. He stated that before them, grayish-brown scaled lizardmen combined tribes with the frogmen. They held a brotherly ritual. Before that ritual was performed, they hung out and shared good things with each other, and also spent time getting to know each other. So he would like it if he tells them more about their tribe, and he too will provide him with as much information about the frogmen as possible. And Reincarnated seemed to ponder for a moment on what to say, but he then noticed something on top of Owen's head and quietly laughed. Owen turned around to see what was going on, and saw a blue butterfly flapping its wings behind him, which made him wonder why there was a butterfly in this time of year. It isn't too warm yet, and there haven't been this kind of butterflies around here in the first place, so that's a bit strange. But after seeing the blue butterfly, Reincarnated knew exactly what to do, and so he puts all his trust on his god's decision and confidently tell Owen everything about him and his tribe.
Hit that like button and thanks for watching.